Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with Crypto Rich. I'm so excited. And you're a social worker like I am. Tell me about that.
Hey Rachel, thank you so much for having me on. And just a little bit about myself, so people don't know. So I started vlogging in April 2017, and it was purely crypto. And then the last 4 or 5 years, life got way too interesting. So I covered more and more politics and macro politics and everything. And I still do a bit of crypto, but I do that part-time. And along the way, what I'm qualified in and trained and experienced in is child protection social work.
Wow. And you are in the community and you work with the kids?
Yeah, it's sort of ish. What happens, because I'm in the UK, what would happen is we'd get a phone call from the school or the police or occasionally a neighbor or whatever, sometimes anonymously or a family member, and they say, look, we're concerned. We're worried about what's happening with this child or these children in this household. So then this other team, they go in, they do a sort of initial assessment to find out what's going on. And then they think, okay, well, we need somebody to work with this family over the long term. And that's where I take over.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's so
so,
interesting.
so my job is really the welfare of the children. And depending upon the age of the children, I often find I'm working more with the parents.
Of
So that's
course.
what I do.
And then what has been your longest relationship with the kids that you've worked with them for how many years?
Ah, well, I work as a contract, as a locum social worker. So I might be in one particular area, one particular local authority, council, for 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 2.5 years. The longest I've done is over 3 years.
Wow.
But so then, and then I move somewhere else. So then I don't have that relationship. However, before I qualified as a social worker, there was a family that I worked with over the course of 7 years where during the school holidays, I would be in the home because they had a teenage sex offender, and I'd just be in the home when he was back from his boarding school. So that family over the course of 7 years.
Wow. Wow.
But generally, Rachel, in child protection social work, we don't want to be working with families for a long time. We want the
Mm,
issue resolved for it to never return, and then it's bye.
mm. And do you see results? You're able to educate the family, help protect the children, or are there a lot of sad cases where the results are not there?
A bit of both. I
Yes.
mean, some of the stuff I deal with is would make your heart weep. And I tell my friends about what I'm dealing with or whatever, and they all go, God, I don't know how you do it. Don't know how you do it. And I say, well, one is I'm blessed with a balance of compassion with insensitivity.
Mm.
So I'm not impacted, when I walk into a room and there's all this tragedy going on. I'm not necessarily impacted. I'm upset. It is upsetting, but I also care about what's happening to the people. And in the background is my purpose.
Mm.
It's very purposeful for me, the work that I do. I'm up for a world where human beings honor human beings. It shapes my social work. It shapes the voluntary work that I do. It shapes the coverage on my channels. It shapes my political activity. It shapes my relationship. I hope it shapes my relationship with my friends and family. A world where human beings honor human beings.
And then how are you able to see difficult situations in the home and with the kids? And how are you able to separate that so that you can sleep at night?
Well, one of the things that I've done along the way is a hell of a lot of self-development
Mm.
and some really effective, life-changing self-development because I am the only resource I've got.
Yes.
If I want to be successful in my marriage, if I want to be successful financially, if I want to be successful in my work, then I'm the one I got to work on. So I've done that. And then how do I answer that? About how do I sleep at night? I'll come to that. But what was the thing that you asked me just before you said that, Rachel? Sorry.
Well, you get results sometimes with the kids, and
Yes.
sometimes it's sad, and you don't.
No, sometimes I don't get results. Sometimes I get the results that I want and it makes a difference. Sometimes I get the results that I don't want, and sometimes it works out well. It's like any undertaking in life. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't. But
Oh,
but
wow.
my job always, always, always is to keep the children safe. If you want, I can give you a couple of examples where I think it's worked out really well and where I think it
Yes,
hasn't worked
yes.
out
I
well.
would love
Right?
the success stories.
Well, in a way, there's nothing, what can I say, that's sort of remedial. Like the people don't necessarily, where I'm at, they don't necessarily get to resolve whatever issues they have about themselves. But sometimes it might be okay. The kid is safe. So I can give you an
Mm,
example. A few years ago, we got contacted from a school about a girl in school. She must have been about 13 years old, and she smelt really, really bad. She was filthy, absolutely filthy. And the school were really worried because she seemed sad and filthy and everything, and still wetting her bed, and she didn't wash, so she smelt of pee. So the school contacted Children's Services, Social Services. So then what I do is I get some information from the school about the girl and everything, and then we have a meeting with the professionals, the police, uh, the GP sometimes, the health services, the school, any other professional agencies, and we look at, well, what is going on in this girl's life. You know, why is it this way? What needs to be done? We share information, and then I go into the home. And that would mean, I'd ring up the mum, and I did. I rang up the mum, and I went round, and I got speaking to her and the daughter, and there was also a son who no longer lived at home, and the dad wasn't at home. And what I discovered was that the dad was an incredibly violent, abusive man.
mm,
And this woman had been with him for 18 years. And she told me some of the stuff. She said that, you know, everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be absolutely perfect. If there was some slightest little thing wrong, like for example, I don't know, that there wasn't enough food in his plate for the dinner or something set him off and he got annoyed, he would tell her, go upstairs in the bedroom and wait for me. And she'd go upstairs in the bedroom in the dark, waiting for him, knowing that he was going to come up and beat her. Night after night after night. The son one day had a fight with his dad and left the house, but his younger sister was still there. And what kids do, she'd probably been grown up, exposed to this level of violence. They blame themselves often.
yes.
If I was different, if I was a better child, right? So then she creates this image of herself where to herself she's awful, not worth keeping clean, hates herself. No, so all love and self-respect for her is gone because she's blaming herself for the fact that her dad, whom she loves, beats
Yes.
her mum, whom she loves.
Yeah.
It's her own fault. If she was better, maybe this wouldn't happen. That sort of childish thinking that we all endured or grew up with. So, the mum's just had enough, but she doesn't have a lot of strength. She's a beaten down woman. The husband's uh, gone off to Europe for about a week or 2 weeks holiday to have a good time. So there's now some freedom that they've got.
Yes.
And then what I did is I connected the mother to a local domestic abuse service, and I think they do amazing, amazing stuff. Usually women, because usually women who come to our attention anyway, right? Men suffer from domestic abuse as
Right.
well. I don't know if it's that common, but they're not the ones who come to the attention of services so much. So, and these women that work in these women's aid agencies do incredible work, incredible, incredible work, really for the mum to get that there's nothing they did wrong. There's nothing they did wrong. And then a lot of practical support. And then what happened, while the woman's getting support from domestic abuse services, I'm working with the school and letting them know what's happening with this girl. And then also sharing information with the police. The police are speaking to the woman. And the woman, and I get in touch with the son, the woman, the son, and the daughter. get together with the grandmother because we bring in, some of the extended family, and they, in a couple of weeks, get everything together to move 250 miles away. That's what they wanted to do, and we supported them. And then what happened was when the father came off the plane, when he returned, he was arrested for assault. And that now that's a successful outcome. But
Wow.
in as much
Wow.
as the abuse got stopped,
Yes.
is the young woman, the girl, is she still suffering? Probably. She's going to need counseling and therapy. Is there a risk that she's going to grow up to become the kind of woman who gets beaten upon herself? Because that's the template she's been exposed to. Yes, unless she does some serious therapeutic work and she gets this, and this is something that underscores my social work practice. And I don't know, I've picked it up from elsewhere,
Right.
and I don't know if it is the case with other social workers. I didn't pick it up from social work theory or whatever, right? But but this is the message that I want to get across to people. And I would say this to you, Rachel. I say this to anybody, right? I think this applies to all human beings. So you ready for
Yes.
what I'm about to
Yes.
say? Okay. There is nothing wrong with you.
Mm.
There is nothing, nothing, nothing wrong with you. You are wonderful. All those things you say about yourself that you think are true, they're not true. You just made them up. Underneath that, before you made those things up, there's nothing wrong with you. You are wonderful. Now, me saying that ain't going to alter the relationship that that person has with themselves. Not in that instance, but it's the, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's the beginning of something.
Well, I love it, Rich, because for some people, they never had anybody say that,
Hmm.
you know? And for the kids, did you find that some of them, when you work with them for 3 months or even, a couple years, did you find that they would look forward to you coming, or would they be a little unsure at first, but then you're the a role model in a way?
Well, it depends upon how long I work with them,
Okay.
depends upon how old they are, and it
Yeah.
depends upon how damaged they are.
Yes.
So, in terms of age, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, up to about 11, they're pretty thrilled to see a social worker. It's somebody, because I don't do any therapy with them. I don't do any
Right.
counseling, right? I just play with them
Yes.
and whatever level they're at. And then between the ages of 11 and 15, they're not so keen on a middle-aged, middle-class, silver-haired social worker coming to hang out with them. I'm not cool. I don't pretend to be cool. And then when they're 15, 16, 17, they'll have conversations with me. But what can you do with a 16-year-old? Right? What can you do, right? Talk nonsense, joke with them. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yes.
So,
Wow. And do you get a sense that you are very quick at picking up what kind of kid they are? Trying to nuance for the age, for the environment, for the problem set, but you really have gotten good at that, picking up on the cues and who that kid is.
well, I don't know about who that kid is, but I see stuff that's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I see stuff that's unhealthy. I don't know if I see all of it because I'm always open to the fact there's more for me to see and discover, and more hidden from my view than I see. So, um, little things, and a lot of it is accumulated wisdom.
Right.
So, like I walk into a house for the first time, 2.5-year-old or 3-year-old comes running up to me, never seen me before, wants to hug me. Now, a lot of people would think, oh, the kid's really confident. No, for me, it's like, oh my God, that's a really bad sign.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that child running up to a complete stranger? That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
What it suggests is that the bond between the child and their primary carer, usually their mum, because they're the ones that carried them, has been disrupted in some way. They have suffered some severe trauma.
Mm.
and they're seeking security elsewhere because they ain't getting it in that relationship, in
Interesting.
that dyad. So it's one of the reasons why, I wasn't going to send my kids to nursery. No way. I wasn't going to send them to infant school. No way. They didn't go to any school really, right? But because it's schools designed to mess up attachment. And
Oh,
attachment is the most important, well, I don't know if it's the most important, but it essentially mammalian. All warm, it's connected to being warm-blooded, I believe. So attachment is the conduit with which love travels, through which care and concern travels, with which we're connected to another. So all birds and mammals look after their young. And how well and how long they look after them is connected to their brain and their emotional development and their template for relationships. And in human beings, it's 7 years because we got such big brains relative to our body size, right? And we live in social groups. We're the most pro-social of all the primates, of all the mammals. So attachment is key to my work as a social worker. And what I'm really, really trained in is distinguishing and looking at where it's been damaged and where it's not. So just little things. So I walk into this house, and this time, this 3-year-old, this house that I'm going in, the 3-year-old has never met me before and is hanging onto the legs of their mum and their dad,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
being shy, cautious, reserved. That's really good.
Oh, yes.
That's really, really, really good. Because at that age, the child is not able to discern who's dangerous, who isn't, and can rely on the security and the safety and the comfort that their primary carer provides.
Wow, that's so interesting. And what's another sign that, just for the layman, and I know it's very tailored, but what would be another common sign that you walk into a house and you think something's not right? You know, signs,
There's all sorts of things, Rachel.
yes.
It's, I was thinking, because you and I, we had an email exchange and you were asking about this. It's got me thinking, how would I do it? How would I do it? Um, I'm from Pakistan. My mum, she's passed away. Absolutely fabulous cook, unbelievable cook. And I remember her trying to teach me how to make curry.
Yes.
And she said, okay, you put in this much turmeric and you put in this much chili. And I'm like, what? Half a teaspoon? A teaspoon? And she goes, no, this much. Because she just knew
Yeah.
from years of accumulated wisdom and practice. And then what I find is now, many, many years later, I can just tell. And I'm sure there's things that you're really good at that you can just tell. Or Tom Luongo, who's been on my channel many times, and I believe you listen to him, and thank you to him for connecting both of us, right?
Thank you, Tom.
The way that he can look at a geopolitical board, what's happening in geopolitics, like he would look at a strategic board game. I can't do that. I remember once going to Mauritius with my best friend and meeting his cousin. And Mauritius, it rains every single day pretty much. And he pointed out to us particular clouds. He was able to distinguish clouds. So he had distinctions. And I think the whole concept of distinctions is something that you and I as human beings aren't necessarily conscious of,
Oh,
but it's really, really important. My father-in-law used to be a music producer. And I remember once sitting with him, listening with him to the Rolling Stones. I'm a Rolling Stones fan. And then he's distinguishing elements of their performance, what they do that's really good. He could, like Eskimos can see different types of snow. A friend of mine's a singer. He teaches singing. He used to be an opera singer. And one day I asked him, what is it about? I love Elvis. I love his voice. What is it about his voice?
right.
And he distinguished for me. It's this frequency.
Oh,
It's this range that he has. Most singers don't have that sort of range, right? It's like, wow. So then similarly with social work, I
Yes.
can distinguish stuff, but to answer your question, consider a child. They're 14 years old. Uh, they get into fights at school, behavioral problems, promiscuous, abusive language, unkempt,
Mhm.
unreliable, poor relationships with their peers. Um, Now on the other side of it, same, right? They're really withdrawn and depressed.
Mhm.
You know, they got no regard for themselves, and it's really, really apparent. No relationships, or they're hanging out with similarly people of a similar template, similar design. Well, what happened to those kids that they ended up that way? And it's the same when they're 16 or 17 or whatever, just a whole lot more. Perhaps they're taking drugs, perhaps they're cutting themselves. There was one, I remember this one kid, uh, how old must he have been? 15, 16 or something. And I was told to go and meet with him. And I read this report from the school. The school had contacted us, and he would stab himself with a pen, cut himself with the blade of a pencil sharpener, bang his head against the desk. Was very, very quiet, never any trouble. Had a few friends, but really kept himself to himself. And I'm reading this, I'm like, what is going on in a young man's mind that he would bang his head against the desk at school or cut himself? So then, I mean, those are pretty, for me anyway, they're really clear signs of some disturbance, some trauma. So I go around his house, I call his mum, and I go around his house with the mum's permission, introduce myself first time I got my pass and everything, and then she leaves me with him in the lounge to chat to him. And I ask him if he's willing to talk to me. And I tell him he doesn't have to, because then, he's got some agency and freedom in the matter.
Yeah.
And then I'm just asking him about his life. What's he studying at school? Does he like school? What doesn't he enjoy? And I have to lean into him
Mhm.
because he's talking so softly and he won't even look at me. So he's looking down, looking away, and I'm leaning right into him and he's answering the questions about this courses that he's studying and stuff. And I say to him, look, I'd like to ask you a question, but I want you to either answer honestly or not answer at all. Will you do that? He said, okay. Now, I'd been talking to him about 45 minutes now, just
Yes.
getting connected, getting connected. I said to him, is there anything you don't want to tell me? Oh, there's something I didn't tell you. Something I didn't tell you that I forgot right at the beginning. One of the things that school report, he's had social workers before. And one of the things that got uncovered is that he still shared the same bed with his mum.
Mm.
Now, of course, my head was like, 15, 16-year-old sharing a bed with mum. What is going on? What is going on, right? He's a sexual being now, right? He's not some
Yes.
4-year-old or 7-year-old or a
Mhm.
2-year-old, right? So I know that's going on. So, and I do ask him about that. I said, look, I know you share your bed with your mum. Do you want to share the bed with your mum? He goes, no. I said, okay. And then I got to like, well, is there anything else you don't want to tell me? Is there anything you don't want to tell me? And he said, yes. So there is something he doesn't want to tell me. And I said, well, thank you for replying honestly. What is it you don't want to tell me? And then he said, my mum showers me. I said, okay. Have you asked her not to? He goes, yeah, a few months ago. What happens? She shouts at me. Has she ever hit you? Yeah, a few times, some months ago. Would you like it to stop? He goes,
Mm.
yeah. I said, would you like me to speak to your mum? He goes, yeah. So I go upstairs. It's a really small little house. And I say to the mum, I find out a little bit about the mum. And the deal with the mum is that she just wanted to look after her baby. And I said, where do you guys sleep? And there was this double bed in the room, and she pointed to the side of the bed where she sleeps. And I said, where does he sleep? And she pointed to the same side of the bed. They got their own sets of bedding, right? And I said to her, you can't be sleeping with your son no more. You
Oh,
can't be
good,
doing that,
Rich. Good.
right? You can't be doing that no more. She goes, he's just my little baby. I said, he's a man. He's
Mm,
a man. Do you know he wakes up? I can't believe I said this right. Do you know he wakes up with an erection every morning?
mhm,
She was horrified. I mean, she wouldn't know what it's like for a 16-year-old boy, right?
mm,
Uh, oh, because I had asked the boy, I said, what do? You wake up, you have an erection in the morning. He goes, well, I creep out of bed and go to the bathroom.
mm, mm,
She's just horrified. I said, okay, well, we're going to make up his. There was a single bed in there that was unmade. She goes, I'm getting it ready. I'm going to get it. I said, no, you're going to get it ready now. Go get some
mm.
bedding. Go get some bedding. Go get. Now, all the time I'm joshing with her. I'm not being threatening. I'm playing with her, right? She said to me at some point, she goes, she said, in our culture, we we bed share, we sleep with our kids. I said, where are you from? She's Nigeria. I said, okay, which tribe? Uh, and before she answered, listen, I'm Igbo, I'm Yoruba, I'm Fulani. Nobody bed shares with their 16-year-old.
Mm.
Right. Now, 6 months later, she told me she was laughing with me. She said, I can't believe who is this Indian guy telling me he's Yoruba and Fulani and Igbo. But I created enough rapport that I could say that with her. Right. And it wasn't that she was sexually abusing him or he her, right? It was just she just wanted to look after her baby. And I said, look, you can't shower him no more. She goes, but he doesn't do it properly. And then if he doesn't do it properly, he smells. I said, he's 16. 16-year-old men, they really smell. They just smell. You remember Rachel being around other 16-year-old boys? They just smelly. All their testosterone is exploding and they just smell. There's no cure for it, right? I said, you can't be doing that no more. So that's it, no more of that. She said, okay. So in that instance, he stopped co-sleep. He had his own bed, stopped co-sleeping. I helped them move into another house where he had his own room, and she stopped showering him.
Wow.
He's still dealing with himself, the shame,
Yes.
but in that sort of, and it wasn't willful, like the mum, wasn't out to punish him or anything like that. She didn't have any malign intent. It was just inappropriate. That's all. Bed share with a 16-year-old.
Yes. Yes. What's so fascinating, because I'm a therapist, and I think that a lot of people have this stereotype that sexual abuse or sexual assault, it's always male perpetrator to female minor, or, that's the dynamic. And I think that people would be very surprised that a lot of times it's female on female sexual abuse, female to male sexual abuse. And so I really appreciate that you brought up that story, because even though you were able to resolve it and help that kid, I like that scenario because I want people to be aware from a professional that, the lines can get blurred, and also more egregious cases, that there are all kinds of scenarios. It is not always the stereotypical one.
Yeah, yeah, and just to be clear, in that instance, I don't have any evidence for sexual abuse.
Right. Yes.
Just to be clear, but
Just
yeah, it
right.
happens all the way.
Lines blurred, but that
Yeah,
one was, you were able to help the kid be safe, appropriate.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And then do you find that you have a particular skill set because of your experience, that you are able to get the kids to share with you and other social workers? That kid had many social workers. And this is the first time that the problem got remedied. And what is it? Is it your experience? Is it that your natural innate social care experience? What is it about you
Well,
that
in
people
this
open up
particular
to you?
instance, so I think it's a bit of both. In this particular instance, I've got 13 years frontline child protection
Yes,
social work.
yes.
I'm very rare. Most
Mm,
social workers will do that for a couple of years. They find it too stressful, and then off they go into other areas of social work or they leave the industry. And like I said at the beginning, I've got a good balance of compassion and insensitivity. Plus, there's all the work I've done in terms of managing my own stress and stuff um, that I've stayed. So there is the accumulated experience. The other thing I think there's a cultural racial dynamic. All the previous social workers were white. And I think
interesting.
what may have happened
Oh,
is she said to them, it's cultural, and they got stopped. And
oh,
I'm like, that's nonsense. Culture would do that. Mum and a 16-year-old. Give me a break. It doesn't happen. Or a dad and a 16-year-old. No.
yes. So is there the part of you that you're clever, that you don't get conned so easily? The newbie social workers or others who are not as culturally aware, they get bamboozled,
Oh,
and
I get
you
bamboozled,
don't get
Rachel.
conned like that.
Rachel, I get bamboozled. I
Oh,
get conned, right? And sometimes I don't even know it, right? So, I'm flawed. Um, it's just accumulated wisdom. That's all I think. Plus knowing myself and knowing what makes me tick, what I'm great at, and knowing what my weaknesses are, what I'm not great at, and then being responsible for those where I can, and then gravitating to that. So,
wow, that's
I'm really
interesting.
clear that in child protection social work, there's certain aspects I'm really good at and really enjoy and relish. Let me keep doing more of that. Elvis should sing and Muhammad Ali should box, not
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yes. What I really loved is that you brought up that for Child Protective Services, you've been doing it for 13 years and that is rare. And I think that another thing that the public may not realize that there's certain types of social work where a lot of people, it is true, you rarely stay in it for a long time because with therapy also a lot of times therapists will do it for a few years, but it's very difficult. It's very tough. And they may do it for a few years and then they move on to a different field of social work or something. And I like that you brought that up, that it is very rare, the longevity, the stamina. A lot of people can only, in a way, they can only hack it for a few years and they have to
Yeah,
take a break.
there's a principle I came across called completing the past.
Mm,
It's very, very powerful and potent. So you and I as human beings, we accumulate past.
yes.
We're accumulating past right now. We now have a past with each other, whereas before I logged on, we had a future, right? We
Ooh.
still had a few, which was this cool. Now we still accumulated a past over
Yes.
the course of the emails, right? All the time we're just accumulating past. And then there's things that happen and we make decisions. So at some point you decided to contact Tom Luongo and ask him to do an introduction. So something happened, you made a decision, and then he decided to respond positively, and then I decided to accept your invitation. So they're all decisions along the way. Now that's not, this is not problematical, it's enjoyable. But what happens as you and I as human beings is we make decisions about ourselves
Ooh.
when we're young in reaction to trauma, or sometimes not even reaction to trauma. We make decisions about ourselves anyway and about other people, and then we get constrained by those decisions, but we carry them around with us.
Mm.
And then it's like if I put on a heavy coat, at first I'd notice that it was heavy. But if I wear it day after day after day after day, night after night after night after night, the heavy coat is just there. It's not heavy anymore. It's just part of life, but it has worn me down and I don't notice it.
Wow.
And the principle of completing the past is okay, I can take the heavy coat off.
I like that.
And but it also happens like on a daily basis. I go into work, some really upsetting issues arise. I'm distressed by them because I'm human. And then and I'm putting on a heavier coat. I'm putting on another heavy coat, another heavy coat, another heavy coat. And then unless I've got a strategy for
Oh,
taking those coats off,
yes.
then over time they're just going to accumulate until I can't stand this anymore. It's become too much. I'm overwhelmed. So the principle completing the past and the exercise of that is what has freed me up. And it has yeah, a bit personal. Am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
So I did say to you over the email that I'd been molested by the father of a playmate. So I made a decision at the age of 7, don't go near men. So then I grow up with very few men friendships. And then the first girl I fall in love with when I'm about, I don't know, 19 or something, turns out she was being raped by her uncle. Well, I have more evidence. Men are shits. And then the girl I'd been going out with, I managed to get some help for her because she was clearly distressed. The girl I'd been going out with before turns out she was being raped by her dad. I managed to get help for her. More
Wow.
evidence that men are shits.
Mm,
So, and then I end up in this industry that's dominated by women dealing with many, many shitty men.
yes.
So that's just, so then my world is constrained because all men are already always no good.
Yeah.
And then I can't get away with the fact that I'm a man.
Oh, powerful.
So
Wow.
that impacts my relationship to myself. But I'm not like those men. I don't want to be like those men. I suffered at the hands of those men, but I'm still a man.
Mm,
So then it wasn't great. So I have mentioned this a couple of times on my podcast. I hope you don't mind me saying this. So my mum was a school teacher. She was a brilliant school teacher, and she had all the trouble kids in a infant school. They'd give them to her, and she'd turn them around at school. And somebody told her about the Landmark Forum, which I did in November 1993. And mostly I'm just sitting there listening to this guy talking about how there's so much more possible than we can ever conceive.
yes.
And the inquiry of the course is, well, how did I get to be the way that I am? Why do I do the things that I do? And what else is possible? So I started thinking about my relationships to men. Why,
Oh,
why do I have such few friendships with men? Why am I so uh, wary of them? And what am I going to do about it? Because I'm still a man. And getting to see what was hidden from my view was that how I diminished myself.
wow.
Um,
Wow.
and then I recalled what had happened to me when I was 7.
Mm,
And I got in touch with what it was costing me. And then I had a very profound insight because the way they do the course is it triggers insights. See, if I say to you, Rachel, or anybody that I'm working with, if I say, look, you are wonderful, you're absolutely wonderful, well, it's going to meet your notion of yourself where you're not, right?
yes.
And it's not going to penetrate that. But what happens if you or I have a powerful insight, a eureka about ourselves? Ah, that's why I can't be with men. That's why I run men down. That's why I stay away from them.
Mm,
And do you know the insight I had? I'm 28 years old. No man is ever going to put me on his lap again.
yes.
I can relax. Now, you saying that to me will make no difference. Me getting it for myself, I can relax. And then what opened up out of that was the whole world of intimate relationships with men, intimate friendships with men, because I don't have to be wary of them anymore. So that's the principle, completing the past, and then learning how to do that um, on a daily, regular basis, and also in my relationships and elsewhere. So
Wow.
that's been very, very useful. And I can't give it away. Like I can't give you balance. If
Right.
you can't ride a bicycle, I can't give it to you. It's it's experiential. It works at the level of ontology, which is the philosophy of being. And who I'm being will give rise to certain actions, which will give me certain results. So it's be, do, have. And then what I find most of life, we focus on, well, how can I do things differently? But if I don't address the being,
Oh, yeah.
so for example, you could say to me, Rich, let's say I'm a shy person.
Yeah.
Rich, um, you can go and speak publicly. You're articulate, you're confident, your communication, you can clear, you can talk, you can engage a conversation. But if who I'm being, if I am who I am to myself is shy, nothing you ever say is going
Mm.
to get me to go in front of a room of 10, 20, 100 people. Nothing. There's no way because of who I'm being. But if I can transform and alter who I'm being
Mm.
through getting an insight that when I was 5 or 6 or 7, something happened and I decided not to speak up. But catching that moment so it's real for me versus a concept.
Oh.
So I'm in the experience of it. That's what happened. So then I can shift, I can transform who I'm being and I just made that up when I was 5. I don't have to be run by a 5-year-old's decision. It's gone. So, so then, okay, sure, I'll go and talk to a group of people.
Mm.
Does that?
That is so beautiful. It almost gives me chills. Like my heart's like racing. It is so beautiful because you healed yourself. And that takes effort and that takes bravery. And this is really hard to do. But because you healed yourself, now you help others. It is so beautiful. Your story, it is amazing. And I really think that you're going to help people. You're going to help people, the men too. They need to hear someone else say this because they had that experience too, where they have all these demons in their past. And you got to process it and you can't be afraid. There's no pleasure without pain. And you have to go through it, but it's worth it. So I love that. It was just incredible. And Rich, my last question for you.
Mhm.
What makes you feel alive?
Oh my God, this is such a terrible question. You put it in an email. All sorts of things make me feel alive, right? And some of them aren't safe for work. I'm happily married. All sorts of things make me feel alive, right? What makes me feel alive? Well, I love being with my friends and family.
Yeah.
I love laughing with them. I love that. I love the joy that comes from contributing to another. I love being connected with another, authentically self-expressed. And then there are certain thrills, like I love open water swimming when the water's just a little bit cold and the sun's beating down. All those sorts of things. I love the work that I do. I find it um, challenging, difficult, stressful, fulfilling, satisfying, engrossing, and it's where I'm meant to be.
You are changing the world. You're helping the kids. And thank you so much, Rich.
Thank you very much, Rachel.